What is up guys, Alex from Lakey Wargames here and welcome to today's hobby discussion video. Today we're going to be talking about why you should stop chasing the meta. Hey guys, Alex here with the power of after recording editing, just here to quickly tell you that there's no on-screen anything for this video, so if you are hobbying away, building your new models or painting something, then you crack right on, because this is more of a listen along discussion / ramble type video, so you just crack right on and I'm going to let the video play. Alrighty, so before we start talking about why you should stop chasing the meta, let's just pause for a second and actually talk about what is meta in the first place. Now, the meta is often regarded as the current strongest iteration of the state of play, so that might be a combination of units, a certain character, or just an army book in general that is considered really strong. Usually the meta is made up of something that is either the newest army book that's come out, because we know that sort of rules creep and power creep is a real thing, and the new books are often a little bit stronger than the ones previous to it, because companies want to sell models towards those new units, new rules, etc., and better rules on the table generally leads to what we call meta chasing, which is where people will go out and buy these units purely on the fact that they are really strong in game on the tabletop. Now, chasing the meta is not my way of saying that you shouldn't be playing competitively or you shouldn't be playing to try and win your games. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and take the most powerful units in your book, but chasing the meta is generally someone who will just move from the most strongest thing in the game at current, and then when that gets figured out and broken down and people learn how to beat it, there's another meta that emerges, or there's been a slight rules change, something else comes out on top, and this player will just springboard from one to the other. Whatever's the top dog at the time is the thing that they will play, purely just because it is the strongest thing currently floating around. Now, the meta varies from place to place. You've got what's generally known in the community as the internet meta, and that is sort of your net lists, and they are army lists that float around on the internet and get copy and pasted, and it might do well in, say, America, and then all of a sudden it pops up on the internet. Everyone's like, wow, that's really cool, I didn't think of that. And then we'll copy that list and play it in wherever they're from, be that somewhere in Europe, South America, or just anywhere else in the globe that's not America, if that's where it originated from. And what you'll find is then it will sort of end up, it'll be in the biggest tournaments in those different areas of the globe, and it becomes the internet list because it's like the list that's always running at the top tables across the globe, no matter where you're from, and it's just generally just copy and pasted, so it's the exact same list, even though it's piloted by different people. It's the exact same units, exact same leaders, traits, spells, artifacts, all that kind of good stuff. And that is generally what the meta list is. Now, you can break that down even further, and you get local metas, which might be your local gaming club, it might be your local store that you travel to, and generally there will be what's known as the meta. That's on a much smaller scale, that's generally not as bad for the game. That will just mean that if you've got a Sylvaneth player in your local scene and he runs lots of tree lords, he goes for like monster spam, then meta in your local gaming establishment might be monsters, whereas globally it might be something to do with cavalry at the time. Now, going back to what I said earlier, like I said, it's not that I'm saying that you shouldn't play competitively or you shouldn't try and win your games, but there is an element of meta chasing that can be very toxic to the game. And that is that if everybody ends up chasing the meta all the time, you end up with a very small amount of list variation, and that everyone just ends up taking the same thing, and that if we all chase the meta all the time, then we'll all be playing the same army with the same list and the same units, and it will just be very, very boring. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is chasing the meta, and I'm not accusing people of, anything of that kind of thing, but it's just more reasons that I think it needs to be said. More as with the internet growing bigger, there's more YouTubers, myself here talking about it now, and easier to spread information and talk tactics and everything like that, that so-called chasing the meta just becomes easier. It's easier to just go online, look at something, go, oh, that did well, and then just, copy and paste it. There are a lot of things that go into winning those games as those lists. I'm not just saying that everyone who's ever won a tournament ever has won just because they're piloting the strongest lists. There is a lot of tactics and player skill involved. Someone who may not have any idea of the game could take the strongest list and play against someone who's very diverse with their tactics and skill level, and the person with the weaker list can still come out on top, which is good. That means it's healthy. That means the rules aren't completely busted, which is nice to see. But I just wanted to talk a little bit because I think it's always nice to have a conversation and remind ourselves, why we're in this hobby. And for some of us, like myself, I am more of a gamer. I enjoy playing. I like building and painting my models, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I build and paint them to play the game. I like to play competitively. I'm not out to try and win any major tournaments or anything like that. I don't care if I top bracket at every single event, but I do like to play to win. I do like to give myself that chance. But I also completely believe in just playing what you enjoy and finding a way to make units that aren't considered meta units strong and combo them off with other things to increase their power, and to be able to take on meta lists with a subpar power list. And I just think it's a good reminder that when you're playing the games and things and making your list, you should just take the units you enjoy because you will have more fun. Strong units and books will come and go, but your favourite units will still forever be your favourite units. I'm very guilty of this with my Nighthaunt. They sort of come and go. Like, I do love Nighthaunt for Age of Sigmar. They are my first love of Age of Sigmar. I really love the rules, the feel, the models per se. And lately with the newest book, we had the Coven Throne Guard come out. And fantastic models, rubbish rules. But they just look great and they feel fun to use. You can combo them off with some things and make them a little bit better than they are, but generally they are considered rubbish units because they're not very strong, they don't have much killing power, and they're very expensive for the amount of bodies that you get. But for me, they are very, very fun to use. And I think when the new book came out, it was all the stuff that I really liked. The Black Coach, his Cavern Throne Guard. I used to love running Spirit Host, just mobs of Spirit Host, just to throw out loads of mortal wounds, but they lost those abilities. And it kind of took a little bit of a knock-on effect for me. And I've dropped my Nighthaunt down by the wayside, and I picked up, other army books to play instead. And then I really miss my Nighthaunt. They come back to me, and I'm just like, but the things I like are rubbish. But I enjoy them so much, and it's that headspace of once you've tried chasing the meta or you try being too competitive for too long, you lose sight of that. This is why I'm doing it. I really like these things. I enjoy building and painting them. They look great, and that's what I should stick to. So the units you enjoy, you have more fun with when you pilot them on the table. Now, another thing that we spoke about earlier is tactics and skill will win you more games more often than just strong units. Yes, if you've got that unit on the thing where it's basically, roll a 2+ and you inflict 5 damage, I mean, that's cool, but there are things such as, your screening, your ability to deploy units and getting them in key positions on the table, your pile-in tricks if your army's got any, your ability combos. There's just so much, so deep into the level of game of tactics that your tactics and skill will win you more games than just taking strong units because they're strong, and they might have a strong ability where you roll something on a 3+ and they do cool things. Like, that's good, but if you're not comboing it with the tactics and the skill level, you will fall behind. And by another point that rolls into is using underpowered units but with those skills will make you a better player, because if you're using the strong units, say, as a crutch to keep you up, keep your win rate up and win you games just because those units are strong, again, when those strong units or books come and go, the things that made them strong, the rules get changed, the weak things become strong, the strong things become weak because sales and all that is indicated by the rules, then you're going to find yourself either having to constantly buy new models or change army books because you're going to need the strongest thing, but those skills and tactics don't transfer with you, and that can really cost you in your games. Now, as well as just having underpowered units with skills, if you do take what's considered to be the underpowered units, the non-meta units, you can do some really cool mind games with your opponent where you make them think twice. They won't know your game plan because they're not familiar per se with the things that you put down on the table, because they don't get spoke about online. You know, they're not in the top lists. People don't take them very often. They'll be like, oh, what does that do? And it's not so much like a gotcha thing, like you're throwing things out with rules where they're just like, they don't know what they do and you crush them because they don't know it. But it's just like, if there's that big list on the internet, again, using Nighthaunt for example, when that book came out, you know, you had the big net lists, and Nighthaunt were winning at sort of tournaments, but there was a pattern to it, and it's kind of like, but if you take the units that aren't in that meta list per se, then when you put things on the table, you're be like, oh, Nighthaunt, you'll be like, oh, but I don't know what they do. And it's kind of like, then you can combine that with your other tactics and skills, like your deployment, your screening, and all that stuff, and it just brings that element of making your opponent think twice. You know, they can ask you straight up, and you'll be like, yep, these do this on a 3, they do this on a 4, blah blah blah. But they won't know like your game plan from the off, because if everyone's running the same list, like Stormcast Dragons, when they were a big thing and everyone was running dragons, you know what the dragons are going to do. They're going to fly up, they're going to do all their mortal wounds, etc., etc. And then you can use, you know, you already know how to defend against that thing if you've seen it a million times over. But if you're lining up against something you haven't seen, it's going to make you think twice. And my last point today was just be, if everybody did those things, if everyone played the units they enjoyed more, you know, taking units that weren't considered powerful, etc., then just in general everyone would have much more diverse games, more fun lists, because there'll be a lot more different variety of units and books and stuff on the table. Not saying that isn't the case. There are lots of players that don't chase the meta and they play their own thing and they have a whale of a time, and there are some books that are considered really down there, like at the moment Gloomspite Gits at the time of recording this are, you know, considered one of the worst factions, but people go out there and play their Gits and they absolutely love it, and even though they might lose all games at the tournament or, you know, every week at the gaming club, they have a great time. And I just think if everybody did that, you see at these tournaments and these top tables and that, it will get to a point where it just ends up with sort of, you know, Marines versus Marines, or, you know, that kind of thing. I don't think Marines are relevant in 40k at the moment. I apologise, I don't play 40k competitively anymore. But I remember that being a thing back in the days when I did used to play. It would just be, you know, you get to that point where you just end up facing off against basically your own army list, and sometimes that can be a cool thing because then it does come down to player skill and your tactics, etc. But it can make for a very boring game when, you know, you're both doing the same thing constantly. But what do you guys think? What do you think about chasing the meta? You know, it's definitely got pros and cons to it, but what are your thoughts on it? Is it something that you would advocate and, you know, say is a good thing for the game, or do you think it's got more of a knock-on effect? Either way, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you guys stay safe. Happy wargaming. Psst! Hey you! Did you know that Lakey Wargames now has an official eBay store? You can buy yourself all kinds of pre-painted and new on sprue hobby goodness and support the channel at the same time. There's a link in the description below if you want to check it out. I'd greatly appreciate it, and it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Okay, see you in the next one.